Hello and welcome back to Matthew's Tottenham blog and to this weekend's Premier League match review. Of course, Tottenham conceded late on yesterday against Everton to draw 1-1 at Goodison Park. Another really disappointing result, another really disappointing performance. And it feels like I'm just going to be saying a lot of the same things that I've been saying, for the last couple of months. I didn't make a review for the Liverpool game last week because for that reason exactly. It's just the same thing. Poor team selection, poor performance, poor subs. No effort, no dedication, throwing away a lead. And I just didn't really feel it was necessary for me to make a video that was just like the ones that I'd made in the weeks before. But there's a few new things to talk about this week, a few things that haven't really cropped up as much as they did yesterday. And I did feel it was important to make this match review. So starting from the very start with that team selection. Look, of course, it wasn't the ideal situation that we had. I think it was 4 or 5 players missing for this game yesterday. We knew in advance that Jan Vertonghen was going to face a late fitness test, and usually, when something like that is said, you don't expect them to play. Danny Rose was suspended for picking up 5 yellow cards already this season. Lamela has a small little injury, and then I think Saturday night, Sunday morning, the news started to break that Harry Kane was ill, and he wouldn't be available for the game. So straight away, Pochettino has very, very limited options, and going into a game against a team who, on a wretched run of form, they picked up, I think, 3 points in their 5 games previous. And just in a similar situation to us, really, invested a lot of money, expecting a lot better than what they have been able to deliver so far this season. It's important as well with Giovanni Lo Celso and Sessegnon. I don't think they're ready to start yet, and I don't think it would be clever to put them into the starting 11 because they've both had injuries. Sessegnon's obviously a lot more long-term than Lo Celso's, and a lot of fans are getting frustrated, and it's understandable in the situation that we're in that they want this fresh, this new blood in the team. But I think it's important that we don't rush Lo Celso and Sessegnon back into first team action because it's happened with Pochettino quite a bit in the last few years, looking mainly at Harry Kane and Alli when he has thrown them straight back in as quickly as possible, and it's just the injuries have come back again, and you can even point at Lamela as well a bit with that. So I think it is important that we do kind of ease them into things. But it's just unfortunate that we do need them as much as we seem to need them right now. As for the starting 11, Gazzaniga and goal, obviously. The back four, I still do not understand how Sergio Aurier is getting into this team. I mean, Pochettino, one of the best managers in the world, going through obviously his toughest period as a manager so far. But I do not, and I know 99.9% of the fans do not understand what Mauricio Pochettino sees in that man. He is, yesterday wasn't his worst performance in the world, that does have to be mentioned, but he is a rash, ill-disciplined, awful defender. And we have players like Juan Foyth and Kyle Walker-Peters, who aren't the most experienced players in the world, but they actually care. They do seem as though they care. When you look at Sergio Aurier, he made the comments recently that he was looking to leave over the summer, and it wasn't the ideal situation for him to still be at the club this year. I do not understand how Pochettino can pick a player like that to go out in the pitch and represent the club in the period that we're in this awful run of form that we're going through. You need players who are 100% behind the badge, behind the club, behind the team. They want to play for the fans. They want to play for the shirt. And getting on quickly to Christian Eriksen as well. He's another one of those players. He has to go. Aurier has to go. It genuinely baffles me how a man who has been so amazing and so clever and intelligent, building this club up to where it is right now, how Pochettino can play these two players week after week. I don't, and I will never understand it. In centre back, Oliver Ireland Sanchez, kind of not too many options there with Vertonghen injured. So I suppose they had to go with that. And Davison left back as well with Danny Rose out suspended. Thankfully, it was a 4-2-3-1. I think we're going to start seeing that a bit more because we've been playing a bit better in games when we do have that. Obviously not at the level that we need to be at, but we have been a bit better than with that diamond in midfield. It is a bit annoying this tinkering in midfield. In our last game we started I think it was in Ndombele and Winks, and yesterday starting in Ndombele and Sissoko, and he's just constantly mixing those two up in midfield, and that tinkering really doesn't help. That's a really important part of the way we play those two holding midfielders. He needs to figure out who his best two are and just start playing them. And this obviously isn't a good moment to try and figure out those two, but I think it is important that we get this consistency in the starting 11, and that could be a really good place to start because we have 3 really good players that we can choose from there. Just pick 2 and go with that and get some sort of continuity in that team. 3 behind the striker, Eriksen, Alli and Son. Son, obviously a no-brainer getting into that team. Dele Alli, I think he did deserve the start. We started to see a bit more from him in the last couple of weeks. And he even mentioned that in his post-match interview. So I think he is one player who is kind of starting to earn his way back into the team. But as I said, for Christian Eriksen, he's a fantastic footballer. There's no doubt about it that he is a technically gifted player. You know, he has the ability, and he has that thing that you need to create something out of nothing, to change a game in a split second. But he just doesn't care enough to do that for us now. I mean, watching him playing for Denmark over the last few international breaks, he has been good. He's been picking out these clever passes. You know, he's been pressing, he's been tackling and stuff like that. But as soon as he pulls on the white jersey, he just doesn't seem to care anymore. And again, another player who made the comments in the summer that he is looking for a way out of the club. That's showing in his performances, and how he's being selected is absolutely baffling. I can't recall in the last 2 or 3 months seeing one fan or a former player or a pundit saying that Christian Eriksen deserves to be in his team, because he does not. And I think Lucas only got that start because of Kane's illness. I don't think Lucas was someone who was in the team initially and then maybe he was just pushed further forward to bring on another playmaker in midfield. I think Lucas was the man who would have been on the bench if Harry Kane hadn't been there. So obviously a bit better that we did get to see Lucas in the starting 11. But again, some really, really strange decisions from Pochettino in that starting team. And again, I will re-emphasise, I'm 100% behind Pochettino. I'm Poch in. I think Poch out is a really, really confusing thing for fans to be getting behind. But he's not helping his situation with these team choices. It's been the same thing for the whole season now, and there have been choices that have cost us games. I'm not sure you could say the selection was that important yesterday. I don't think it was that did cost us the game, but you know, he needs to start. He needs to start picking the players that want to play, and if that means sending Oliver Vertonghen down to the reserves teams and starting players like Japhet Tanganga, or you know, getting Eriksen out of the team and bringing in someone like Troy Parrott or Harvey White, I don't care if he's getting rid of these top superstars and bringing up these young players, because right now playing the superstars isn't working because they don't care. And it's really annoying and painful to watch, but they absolutely do not care. So we need to start getting players like Troy Parrott, Japhet Tanganga, Harvey White into the team, because we saw how well they did in pre-season. So give them a chance on the big stage. You know, play them. They will give 110% every time they're on that pitch. So maybe they are the ones that deserve a start, you know. So yeah, going into the first half of that game, it was probably the most boring 45 minutes of football I've ever watched. Both teams were absolutely diabolical. I mean, there were a few glimmers from a few players throughout the 45 minutes, but there was just no... I think Alistair Gold put it really well. You know, he said it was two teams who were just trying not to concede. You know, there was no attacking football. It was just sitting behind the ball, keeping possession in midfield, and just trying not to fall behind. And I mean, you could tell it was two reasonably big teams, I suppose, on just really bad form, because as I said, there were those moments of kind of quality, but they were so few and far between. It was a painful watch, to be honest. And you can't even say it was like a cagey tactical affair, you know, that we've seen these really good games in Premier League before. You know, it often happens when Klopp and Guardiola come up against each other with Liverpool and City. You know, the game can start out kind of cagey, the two teams just kind of trying to figure each other out. But that wasn't the case yesterday. There was no clash in tactics. There was no... you couldn't really say either team was cancelling each other out. There was nothing to cancel out, and it was a really painful watch. From the Tottenham side of things, I think one player who did show a bit of quality was Tanguy Ndombele, who maybe has been our best player this season because he is showing these moments. He's obviously not yet at his best. He's not. We're going to see a lot of improvement from him over the next 12, 18, 24 months, as we've heard from Mauricio Pochettino. But he's showing these moments that, you know, it's exciting to watch. Again, go back to what Alistair Gold said. He put out a tweet after the game yesterday. He made some really, really good points. And he said Ndombele just at times was trying to do too much, because I'm sure he realises that the players around him just aren't playing well at all, and he kind of feels the burden to do a bit more himself, because he seems to be the only one at the moment who's in a situation, who's in the kind of form where he can create something. And he does try to do a bit too much at times, and that's probably his biggest downfall, and which is why these moments that he does show, they're not really consistent. It is just every now and then he'll beat a man or two and he'll play a good forward pass. Look, aside from that, there really isn't much to talk about in that first half. There was a few half chances, but again, nothing major. And then it just all kicked off in that second half, and you know, the three main points really to talk about from that half: obviously the goals, the absolute shambles that is VAR, and the unfortunate incident with Son, Aurier and Gomez. So starting from the start, that Son penalty shout on about 50 minutes. VAR, I don't entirely agree that it should have been a penalty, but I can see why people would consider it a penalty. Now, the fact that VAR initially took, I think, about 90 seconds to make that original decision, they reviewed it once, they had these few different angles, and they decided that it wasn't a penalty. But before the game restarted, they found another angle of the footage, and then they had to recheck the check that they initially had, which was another minute gone. So that's nearly 3 minutes with the first check, the time in the middle where they decided to have another check and then go back and check it again. That's nearly 3 minutes of football gone, and any bit of fluidity or any bit of tempo in the game is going to be completely killed off by that. And the thing that really confused me is kind of yesterday I kind of noticed it for the first time, but looking back on previous VAR decisions, I do not understand why they're going to take this long. Even let's just kind of look at that first decision on its own. Take 90 seconds to make a decision like that, and why the referee is just standing there on the pitch, just standing there with his finger to his ear telling players leave him alone, when he can be going over to that monitor on the side of the pitch, which has not been used once in Premier League so far. There's been, over 100, 110 games played. There's been hundreds and hundreds of checks, and not one referee has gone over to the pitch side monitor. They just stand there on the pitch doing absolutely nothing. I don't understand why they can't go over and have a look at the monitor while VAR are checking it, and maybe they can come to individual decisions, and if they have the same decision, then that's finalised, go off and do it together. Or if they can be in communication looking at the same things. So instead of one man in the VAR studio in Stockley Park with his assistant, instead of the two of them trying to come to a decision, because obviously if one thinks it's a penalty, one thinks it's not, there's going to be a clash there and it's going to take longer. If the referee can be involved in that decision, not only can he take into consideration what he saw in real time, because he's always going to have had a different angle to any of the cameras. If you have three people looking at it, there's no chance that their decision can be a clash in the end. And when the referee is just standing there doing absolutely nothing, you really have to question why the Premier League has made these changes to VAR, because I think that's why it worked so well in Russia in 2018. It was a really kind of confusing decision for them to trial it on such a big stage, but I think they implemented it really, really well. It wasn't perfected, and I don't think it has been perfected in any country or in any competition that it's been in use. But the Premier League have made all these changes to it where they've encouraged the referee to not look at the monitor to save time, and they've just all these different changes they're making, and they have made changes throughout the season as well. There's been 3 or 4 times where they have made changes, and it's just leading to these inconsistent decisions. And I think the one to really compare Sons to was less than 24 hours before, when Watford got a penalty against Chelsea. It was a different kind of challenge, but I think it was a similar sort of situation where the player Son, I think it was Deulofeu for Watford, had the ball in the box, and he took a kind of awkward touch, and there was contact for Deulofeu. He was clipped by Jorginho, and obviously for Son, with the defender falling onto his leg. And there's a moment or two before they fall, and I think if that Watford one was of course given, and I'm not entirely decided personally on whether or not something like that should be given as a penalty, because there is contact, but if it takes the player a second or two to go down because maybe he has seen that the chance is gone or something like that, then there's not enough contact for him to go down in the first place. And it all comes back to what is a foul. Is it any bit of contact in the area? Is it enough contact to knock them off their stride or make them fall over? It's a tough one, and I think that maybe this is a type of decision that VAR shouldn't interfere on, because it is entirely subjective. But if they're going to give that one for Watford on Saturday night, I think they have to give the one for Son on Sunday. And it's just this inconsistency from VAR is just confusing absolutely everyone. The only bit of consistency there does seem to be is with these offside decisions, which are probably the ones that they shouldn't be interfering on, because the main phrase that we're hearing with VAR is it has to be clear and obvious. And you look at obviously the goal we'd ruled out against Leicester by Serge Aurier when Son, he was millimetres offside, and look at the incident with Roberto Firmino against Aston Villa on Saturday. And as someone who really really doesn't like Liverpool, and obviously I would enjoy seeing them lose to a team like Aston Villa, that goal should have stood. I mean, the fact that they put down the lines and Firmino's onside, then they've changed him and all of a sudden he's offside. That just shows it's not a decision that can be made by the technology that is there. He can be, in that moment he might have been onside, he might have been offside. There's no definitive way of saying for sure, because it all comes down to, is it when the player passing the ball first makes contact? Is it when it leaves his foot? What part of Firmino can be offside? Because in the end they decided he was offside by his armpit, which, I mean, it has to be a part of your body that you can score a goal with. But if the ball hits your armpit, I imagine that would be ruled out because there's going to be an element of obviously this part of your arm actually hitting the ball as well. So can you really score with your armpit? And even if you can, that was way too close for any decision to be made. And VAR, ideally right now would be completely taken out of the Premier League, changed around and maybe brought in again at the start of next season. But it's not going to happen because they seem really, really stubborn, and we're just going to have to deal with this software, this technology that was brought in to get rid of these arguments. But I feel like we've had more discussions, more arguments about contentious decisions than in any season I can remember in the Premier League, and it really is ruining things. But we're just going to have to deal with it at this stage. At least Tottenham aren't the only ones underperforming, I suppose. Moving on to Dele Alli's goal, it came out of nowhere, to be honest, because there was never really any stage in that game where it seemed like we were going to score. And even when we won that ball back in midfield and Son made the pass through to Dele Alli, you can see as soon as he made that first touch that he wanted to bring it onto his right foot. And for me, I was thinking, a defender's going to read that, he's going to be dispossessed. Even when the chance came, it just felt like we weren't going to score. But thankfully, some really questionable defending from Mason Holgate. He kind of allowed Dele Alli back in onto his right foot, and it was a clever finish from Dele Alli back across the goalkeeper. And I suppose in a game where there were so few chances and such little quality in the pitch, it did feel as though maybe that would have been the goal to get us over the line, because after that we began to look a bit comfortable. The goal came at a good time, and we did begin to look comfortable. I wouldn't say we were controlling the game, but we were definitely kind of more confident on the ball and more solid in defence after that goal, because it gave us that little confidence boost that we needed. And then Dele Alli himself nearly completely ruined that good work immediately after with that penalty shout for Everton. Now, if you haven't seen the incident, basically a corner came in from Everton from the left-hand side, and Dele Alli went up to challenge in the air with Yerry Mina for the ball. And Yerry Mina, he went to header it, but missed it with his head, and it ran onto his shoulder. And Dele Alli, who was on the wrong side of him to start with, he had jumped up with his arm above his head like that, and the ball, it might have been his right arm, but the ball very, very clearly hit his arm and bounced away. I think it was cleared in the end. Now, Dele Alli was interviewed after the game, and his excuse was he felt an elbow in his face, and that made him put his arm up. I don't know if it meant to try and block it or something, but VAR looked at it from quite a few angles, and every single angle you could see the ball kind of grazing off Yerry Mina's shoulder and very clearly hitting Dele Alli on the arm. Obviously I'm a Tottenham fan, I'm glad the penalty wasn't given, but I think it should have been given, because even though it did make contact with Yerry Mina and the ball didn't travel very far from Mina's shoulder to Ali's arm, his arm was in a completely unnatural position. Even if you have been elbowed, I really don't think your opposite arm is going to come up over your head like that. And that decision, it took VAR 3 minutes and 4 seconds to make that decision. I just don't understand how they can take so long and spend so long looking at the ball very clearly hitting Dele Alli's arm and then decide it wasn't a penalty. And I can fully understand the grievances that Everton have with that decision, because watching every single angle they showed, watching it live on TV, I thought, yeah, they're going to give that penalty, and you can't really argue about it. It did hit his arm. So even though it is a decision ultimately I was happy with, because Everton didn't get a penalty, I do think it was the wrong decision. And again, VAR making an absolute joke of itself. And then moving on to, I suppose, the biggest incident in the game, and obviously a really, really unfortunate one. And my thoughts go out to Andre Gomez, and obviously wish him a speedy recovery. It was a really awkward moment, and there's no one to be blamed for it. There's absolutely no way that something like that could be prevented, because you have the challenge that Son made. He pushed him in the back and gave him a little trip. It's a tactical foul. There are tens of them in every single game. It was just really unfortunate that then Serge Aurier had initially been coming in to try and make a challenge. And I think Aurier, he did look a bit off balance. He seemed to be falling already when he made the collision with Andre Gomez. But with Gomez, the way his foot got caught up in the turf and just the way it was turned when he made contact with Aurier, it was just a freak accident. There can't be anyone blamed for something like that. It's just really unfortunate, and Gomez is obviously going to be out for a really long time, and it's not something that you'd like to see. And you could see the effect that it had on the players. It was a really, really bad injury, and he's going to be out for quite a while. But while that is probably the most important thing to take from it, that obviously wishing Gomez the best, I do think from a Tottenham point of view we need to take a look at why Heung-min Son was given a red card for that. Because the Gomez went down, and it was a tactical foul. Again, tens of those in every single game, and the referee had the card out. He was walking over, he had the yellow card out, walking over to Heung-min Son, and he looked and he saw Andre Gomez's leg, and obviously he put the card away and dealt with that situation at first. But it was very obvious he gave Heung-min Son a red card because of the injury that Gomez suffered rather than the challenge itself, which, look, in the moment he's obviously reacting to, the emotion and the kind of shock of seeing something like that. He must think, oh, maybe he might have missed a little touch from Son that could have caused an injury like that. So I suppose from the referee's point of view, maybe you can forgive and understand it quite to some extent, but why VAR didn't look at that and overturn it is something that I still just do not understand. They seem to have gotten everything wrong yesterday, VAR. Son, he came over, he gave him a little push, a little trip. That's not a red card. And the defence that I see from a lot of people, from a lot of Tottenham fans in particular, is that you have to take Son's intent into consideration when you're deciding whether or not that should have been a red card. And I do understand why you're saying that, but personally I disagree with that, because there have been many challenges in the past where a player has, with good intention, gone in to try and get the ball, but he's maybe been a bit out of control and he has really severely injured an opposition player. And even though his intention in that moment was to get the ball, he has endangered his opponent and subsequently he should be sent off. I mean, a good example of that is Liverpool played Man City at the Etihad a couple of years ago when City won 5-0. The incident with, I think there was a long ball played over the top and Sadio Mane and Ederson were both coming out for it, and Mane jumped up and he put his foot up to try and control it, and Ederson came out and headed the ball, and Mane in the end went studs first into the side of Ederson's face, running at real pace, and even though in that moment Mane's intention was to control the ball and he didn't even look to see the keeper coming, it was entirely a complete accident. But when he was running at such pace and he had his leg up in the air, he was out of control of his body, flying through the air. He endangered his opponents when he's lifting up his leg that high, running at such speed. And I think that should have been a red card. But Son, he didn't endanger his opponent. He pushed him over. What endangered him was the presence of Serge Aurier, which again is absolutely no one's fault. It's just a really unfortunate incident. And what does need to be, the only thing that should be taken into consideration is not the intent. It's not the injury suffered by the player. It's solely the challenge that was made, and that from Heung-min Son was not and did not deserve a red card. And I don't think Tottenham are going to appeal the decision. I think they should, and I think if they did, it would more than likely be overturned. Now, the Premier League did actually release a statement saying they defending the decision to send Son off, and they said it was because he did endanger his opponent. But I think that's a load of crap. I don't think you can say that by pushing Andre Gomez that he endangered him to the extent that he could have broken his leg. I mean, if that's the case, every single challenge in a game of football deserves a red card, and it's going to become a non-contact sport. So while I do think the decision should be appealed, and while I think it would be a successful appeal if they did do that, I think it's because of the injury suffered by Gomez in that situation. I don't think the club can appeal it, and I think someone like Pochettino and Heung-min Son, who obviously was absolutely inconsolable and completely distraught, and you have to feel for him as well, because I'm sure he's seen it back a few times, and he will see that it was ultimately the contact with Aurier that did cause the injury. That's not going to be much consolation to him, I suppose, because he's the one who pushed him into that challenge, and a man like him, it may take him a while to recover from something like that. But I mean, it was a strange decision to send him off, and I don't think the club will appeal it for those few reasons. And after that game, it was backs against the wall. It was Everton trying to get their equaliser, obviously given the boost of Tottenham going a man down, and obviously that setback of what happened with Gomez. It's hard to come back after that, but fair play to Everton, they did respond well to it. They did play well in the last 10-20 minutes of the game, including the 12 minutes of added time. But it wasn't a situation that should have happened, because we should have had 11 men and we should have continued to control the game the way we did. The goal that they scored in the end, it was really poor defending. A lot of space down the left hand side for the cross to come in, and there was two players standing completely unmarked in the box. One of them, of course, Cheng Tosun, who headed it home. And again, we've thrown away a lead. I don't know how many times it is that we've done that this season, but just off the top of my head, you have the game against Bayern Munich, even just last week against Liverpool, the 2-0 against Arsenal, the 2-0 against Olympiacos. We're throwing away leads way too often, and as a team who one of our best attributes was game management in those few years where we were doing really, really well, we just can't do it anymore. We simply cannot see a game through, and it's just, where do we go from here? We've got Red Star Belgrade now on Wednesday away from home, which is going to be a really, really tough game. They beat Liverpool there 2-0 last year. Of course, Liverpool went on to lift the Champions League trophy, so even though they are not a very good European side, it's going to be a really daunting atmosphere. And again, on the poor form that we're on, it's who knows what's going to happen. Our next Premier League fixture now on Saturday against Sheffield United. They're, I think, 7th or 8th in the table, playing really, really well, conceded twice in their last 6 games. They're scoring goals for fun, put 3 past Burnley in the first half on Saturday. It just doesn't feel like things are going to turn around very soon. And I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, the excitement of game day is gone, because it just feels like it's going to be the same old crap. Every Wednesday, every Saturday, every Tuesday, every Sunday, no matter when we play, it feels like it's just going to be the same old crap. 11 players out in the pitch, you don't care. Maybe grab a goal, but ultimately we're going to throw it away and we're going to bottle it. It's hard to see where we go from here. Sacking the manager isn't the answer. Are we going to sign players in January? We've gotten mixed messages from Pochettino. We said we will, we won't, we won't. Just nobody knows at this stage, and it just doesn't feel like anything's going to change anytime soon. But what can we do about it? Look, as always, don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. There's obviously a lot to talk about, as I've done for the last 26 minutes. But yeah, don't forget to leave your comments down below. Like this video if you have enjoyed it, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel down below. I'll be back for my match preview for the Red Star Belgrade game, and obviously we'll go from there. Thanks for watching.